What's up, YouTube? I'm Robert, and this is the biker channel, B1. Today, you are here on the Biker Bar. I think this is episode, I know this is episode 15. And today, we're going to have TRP Cycling, which is better known for their brakes rather than just cycling in general. Before we get started, though, I wanted to thank everybody that's tuning in. Once again, here we are. It's Sunday. Some of you guys are missing some football games. Most of you mountain bikers are probably not watching that stuff. Nonetheless, if you guys want to support the channel, it would be great if you could swing by Patreon maybe and have a little piece of that, because eventually it's either going to be commercials for Patreon, me, or it's going to be maybe someday I'll have a sponsor, and then you'll have to listen to some boring ass shit. If it's a podcast, you'll be hitting that skip 30-second button, trying to get back to the spot where people start talking again. So if we want to keep the sponsors off the Biker Bar, swing by Patreon and help support the channel. That would be awesome. So today we have Cody from TRP Cycling, and I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself and just a little bit about the company maybe.
Yeah, I'm Cody Phillips from TRP Cycling. I've been with the company about 2.5 years now. I've come from racing background personally and got hired to do marketing initially, and now I do some of our marketing work and then some of our OEM sales in North America. So a little bit of everything. We're I guess smaller in manpower, but gaining a larger footprint in the industry. A little bit of the background of the company. It's been around, I think, close to 15 years now. Our parent company is Tektro, which many may know is like entry-level cycling products. They're going to give you most bang for your buck. Tektro wanted to make high-end products with some of the best materials and not have to worry about the cost of them, and that's kind of where TRP came from.
Right on, dude. So we bumped into each other over at Interbike this year. You were at the outdoor demo. Were you guys on the inside too?
Yeah, we did both. We were in the back corner for indoor.
How did you like that? Was that your first one?
That was my third Interbike actually. But the indoor was a little quieter this year, so it wasn't as hectic, which was nice. Like, I enjoyed it personally. I don't know if it was as good for business this year.
You know, I asked you that, and then I just remembered I did remember seeing you guys on the inside there. That was my first time being to Interbike, and it was you know, when I went to Sedona, I really enjoyed that a lot. Like, it was really fun talking to all the different companies and stuff. And when I was at the outdoor portion of Interbike, I really enjoyed that as well. But the inside portion, to me, it was just a little different than what I was expecting. And I think I was expecting a bunch of like all the big companies being there and like a bunch of new products to be unveiled and stuff like that. And I think that stuff happens at other venues now. It doesn't seem like that's the same way that it was in what I was expecting. And I think the same thing happened with my subscribers as well, because when I put the video out, they're like, well, where's all the stuff from Outerbike or Interbike?
Yeah. Yeah, so, the indoor is a little more of a display show, and I think it's changed over the years with the outdoor things becoming more relevant. So, you know, you see everything on the internet, so there's no reason to go see it in person on a stand. You want to go ride it, and that's why you're there, and you want to see how it works. Right,
exactly. So you said you had a racing background?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of, I mean, I got into bikes as a kid, but I always wanted to race and be competitive. And so I ended up racing, started when I was about 12 or 13. And then they came out with the SoCal League in the high school mountain bike league in Southern California. And I ended up getting into that, racing that a bunch, and went to college and raced bikes in college at East McRae College, which is the town I live in now. And then realized there's not a whole lot of money in racing bikes professionally. So I got a job, and so sometimes I get to ride my bike for work, and it's about as close as you can get without having to ride your bike for 8 hours a day.
Right. How'd you get hooked up with TRP?
I had a friend working at a company nearby in Ogden, Utah, which is kind of a hotbed. There's a bunch of companies all located. And he had heard that they had someone recently leave, and I was looking for a job out of college, and he kind of connected the two.
So they're out of Utah. I'm sorry, I missed where you said you were from. Are you in SoCal or are you in Utah as well?
So I'm originally from SoCal. I work remotely from North Carolina.
Oh, cool.
And then the company is in Ogden, Utah, the headquarters.
Gotcha. Now I'm tracking.
Yeah.
What's your place that you like to ride the most over there?
I mean, it's Pisgah National Forest.
Yeah.
It's not very specific.
That place is huge, isn't it?
Yeah, Pisgah is the third largest national forest in the country.
Wow.
It covers 5 states. So a lot of people have heard of Pisgah in Brevard, Asheville area, which I actually drove down there and rode that today.
Oh, sweet.
But the area I ride is called Wilson's Creek, and it's much lesser known. And you're not going to see tire tracks. Nothing's burned in out there. It's very raw, natural, like backcountry riding.
Right on.
Like I carry a first aid kit with me out there.
Yeah, I actually carry a first aid kit everywhere. I'm one of those. Yeah. I'm one of those guys that's like the pack rat, or the pack.
Yeah.
Like, I recently went through my Camelback and was like, this is. I'm gonna get rid of at least a quarter of a pound of shit out of this thing. In my mind, I thought I was going to get rid of like 5 pounds of stuff, but when I went back through it, I was like, oh no, I can't get rid of that. What if I need to do a tourniquet? What if I need to chop down? What if I need to chop down a tree? What if I need to have an extra link for a 9-speed, a 10-speed, 11-speed, or a 12-speed? It's ridiculous. It really is. That really helps a lot though, knowing that Pisgah is. You said 5 states.
Yeah, I think it's Georgia, North Carolina, Virginia, Kentucky, probably Tennessee.
Wow.
I think is the 5th one. Yeah.
That makes so much more sense to me now. I mean, in my mind, it was just around that Asheville area, but there's all these different trails that I see people riding, and I'm like, man, that's just like a huge amount of trails all in one area. Now it makes a lot more sense that it's kind of like a forest, and it's like just different sections of that forest.
Yeah, I mean, the Asheville Brevard area has a ridiculous amount of trails. I think there's more than you could ever ride living down there. But yeah, there are a lot of different zones. There's some really good Pisgah riding down in Georgia. Where I'm at, I'm in next to Grandfather Mountain, which is one of the highest peaks on the East Coast. So we're some of the more like high altitude.
Oh, okay.
And we'll drop in on some trails at around 5,000 feet above sea level, which is super high for the East Coast.
Yeah.
And we'll shuttle it and descend all the way down to about 2,000 feet. And it'll be a 4 or 5 hour ride with 2,000 or 3,000 feet of climbing and probably 6,000 feet of descending.
Oh wow, sounds like a good time, man.
Yeah, it's pretty cool too. It's like a endurance riding for enduro or downhill guys. You get to be on your bike for 6 hours, but you're only pedaling for half of it.
Yeah. Out here in California, where I'm at in Northern California, we have a bunch of like, basically it's like pay and then play. It's like, okay, you're gonna pedal for freaking 6 miles and then you're gonna descend for that, or something like that.
Yeah.
So, or
where are you located out of?
I'm in Northern California, so I'm in Sacramento. So basically all the stuff around like Tahoe and stuff like that is a lot of what I ride in the summertime. And then in the winter and when I don't feel like driving, there's just a bunch of stuff around here and also in the Bay Area kind of, but not a whole lot in the Bay Area. But I mean, it's only a couple hours for me to get to like Santa Cruz or something like that. So
yeah, Santa Cruz is one of my favorites.
Yeah, definitely a fun place to go. Definitely a lot of pay to play there too. I mean, if you're doing like Flow and Braille in one day, you're getting some climbing in.
Yeah.
So you guys have basically a bunch of brakes is what you guys sell at TRP, right?
Yeah, so we do brakes. We actually make a carbon cyclocross fork.
Oh, okay, a fork too.
Yeah, and we've done some axles in the past. So our official name is TRP Cycling Components.
Right.
But we kind of specialize in brakes, coming with the Tektro background and their background in brakes. And so we've been expanding on that a lot in the last really the last 3 years. Right around when I started, they signed Aaron Gwynn and said, let's go big in the mountain bike brake industry. You know, we see the mountain bike sector growing and having a need for different products and reliable products and quality. And then we see more opportunity with mountain bikes because the brakes and the shifter aren't one unit like they are with road bikes.
Right.
Which hydraulic disc brakes, you have to have a shifter with your brakes. And so that kind of ruled us out of some of the road bike business for the time being.
So you guys picked up Aaron Gwynn. That's a pretty big name to be getting right out the gate there.
Yeah. Yeah, it was basically, I mean, the story's out there, but long story short, he was looking for a brake sponsor, and the two big guys, I think, didn't want to pay him what he was asking, which, in my opinion, was a pretty fair price. And then so he kind of looked to us and some of the smaller companies, and he wrote our brakes and said, hey, I really like your brakes. I like what the company wants to do, and you guys want to make a better product and work with me, and that's kind of what I want to do. So it was partially that we had a good product, and it was partially that we wanted to improve and push our product the way he pushes his racing. And so he really viewed it as more of a partnership than a sponsorship in a way.
Right on. So I'm going to pull up your website here, and I'll try to explain it as well, because this is also a podcast that's on Apple and Google Play and SoundCloud after the fact. So I noticed that you guys got a handful of different models here. And for those of us that don't know your lineup, let's kind of go through it in terms of like maybe how Shimano's are. A lot of people know their like lineup. So is this Quadium is how you pronounce your top line here?
Yeah, we call it the Quadium. And those are kind of just, so what you're looking at there is some of the highlighted products. As far as like, that's, a brake we think is going to be more desirable to people. So we kind of put that on the front page.
Got it.
Essentially, we do brakes in every sector. What you're looking at there is our mountain bike line. So we have kind of our downhill gravity, which enduro these days blends the line between trail riding and full-on downhill World Cup riding.
Right.
So we tried not to pigeonhole our products and say this is for enduro riders and the downhill guys won't use it, or if you say this is for downhill guys. So we have our gravity brakes, which is the two versions of the Quadium. It's a 4-piston brake with a super overbuilt caliper. It's not going to be the lightest.
So that would be close to like a SRAM Code or a Shimano Saint, something like that?
Yes. So it's a very equivalent to both of those. And what kind of sets ours apart is the modulation. It's so if you think of it in terms of like a spring rate or on a graph, it's a very linear power curve in the way it rides. So it allows you to have a little more control when you're braking on a trail bike. So it has the power and the heat management to do downhill World Cup racing, obviously with Aaron Gwynn, but it gives you the control so that when you're on a trail bike, you're not locking up. If you have smaller tires and smaller contact patch and you're on wet routes or wet leaves, things you don't find on the downhill track. So that kind of blends the lines there.
So what would be like considered like the XT kind of line or like the Guide Ultimate?
So with the XT, it's kind of it's slated as like your trail bike enduro line.
Right.
And then it's also slated as a certain price point. It's like the best money can buy without spending more than you need to. There's no carbon bits, there's no titanium, but it's still gonna be pretty light and pretty reliable. So we have the Quadium, which is the non-G-Spec version. G-Spec being like our XTR level.
Okay.
So the Quadium's.
So the G-Spec, when you're G-Specing, it's like you're a pimp, right?
Yeah. Yeah, something like that.
Got it.
So the Quadium is our XT price point. And so you have two choices. You can go with the Quadium, which is like you want an XT brake, but you want some downhill power and downhill reliability. Maybe your trail riding is super gnarly. And then we have a new brake coming out that's I don't believe is available yet, but it should be in the next month or two. And that's the G-Spec Trail SL. And the SL is aluminum lever blade. Uses the same caliper as our downhill brake, but a lighter lever. So you get a little weight savings. You get that same kind of XT zone price. So it's fairly affordable, fairly reasonable price, but high performance. And then we also have the Slate, which is a little lighter than that. It's a little more of like a cross-country trail brake, your 120 trail bikes, where you're not getting too gnarly, but you might go do a big descent. And that's also an XT price, but it just hits a different sector of how you plan to ride your bike, essentially.
Got it. So one of the things that somebody had mentioned to me when I said I was talking to you guys this weekend, they're like, "Oh, TRP, they're super expensive." Do you feel like you guys are expensive, or do you feel like that's kind of like just the public not really knowing your products that well, or how does that make you feel?
I mean, it's a hard subject to cover in the bike industry because basically every company, all the stuff we make is absurdly expensive to the average person.
Right.
And you're paying $5,000 for a bicycle. That's absurd.
Right.
But in the scheme of high-end mountain bike brakes, I think we are actually typically come in just below a SRAM or Shimano.
Okay.
Sometimes it's probably a lack of communication or consumer education on our products where, we'll say, hey, this product is competing on price with these products over here. And then it's competing on, the production quality or the performance with these products over here. And so sometimes people will compare, oh, well, this is competing with an SLX brake, so it's more expensive.
Right.
But it's actually a higher made brake. So a good examples are G-Spec Quadium. That brake is forged, CNC'd, hand polished, and then anodized for the finish. It's a $400 brake set, which after you buy rotors, you're looking at maybe $475 to $500, which is the same price as a Saint. A Saint has a few anodized bits, and then the rest of it is a painted finish. When you look at something like a Hope will have the same finish as ours, where they're CNC'd out and then anodized and assembled. You're looking at, I believe, at least a $550 brake set to $600-700.
Right.
So if you look at it on its merits of, okay, how is it produced? What materials do we use? And then how will it perform? We tend to come in, 10-15% on price below people, but because it comes in below, they say, oh, it's not competing with that. It must be competing with this Shimano that's lower priced than the TRP. Therefore, TRP is overpriced.
Right. So basically, people just don't understand your product line that well because ultimately you guys are a newer company. Or are you guys coming spec on anybody's stuff, like build it out like straight from the factory?
Yeah, quite a few now, and that's actually a big part of my job is helping to hopefully grow that in the future. But for 2019 bikes, which are either coming out, being announced right now, or they have been over the summer, we'll be on Ghost and High Bike, which are bigger in Europe, and then a few, Specialized has some of our brakes. You'll see them on the new Jamis trail bike. The new Fuji trail bike. Marin's got some cool bikes with their brakes on them. Right on. I don't want to miss anyone because these guys are all my customers, but I think those are kind of the ones who are at the top of my mind for 2019. And then obviously right now we're working on 2020 and trying to confirm some of that.
Yeah. I think some of the price points and stuff that you were talking about earlier, I really want to address it from my perspective. Is I've found out in life, you always get what you pay for. So I mean, very, very seldomly is there some product that's priced way cheaper than everybody else's and is like a far superior product. You know what I mean? So yeah. I feel like when people really get stuck on the number of like what something costs, to me, I'm like, you really shouldn't be focusing on how much something costs. I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, you got to be able to afford it. But on the other end of it, it's like, how does this perform? Like the reason that I bought Saints was because I'm a big fucking dude, man. And if I want brakes that work for a big fucking dude, then I have to pay for the big fucking dude brakes. You know what I mean? I can't go out and get the SLX and be like, what the fuck, man? SRAM or Shimano sucks or whatever it is, you know? So I totally think that at the end of the day, you know, let the product speak for itself, and then you can like go ahead and like bitch about how much it costs or like haggle the price or whatever it is you're going to try to do, you know. I'll tell you what, when I saw your stuff in at Outer Bike, I was actually really impressed just by looking at it. I mean, you could tell that the like, you can tell the work that was put into designing them, you know, like even down to your rotors, which maybe we can talk about now as well. Like your rotors look just sick. They have like kind of like these little notches taken out of them. And then inlaid in that is that an anodize that's inside of there or something like that?
I think it's just a black paint, but because it never actually contacts the pad, the paint doesn't wear off.
Right. So it kind of gives us this just like a really cool like design look to them. So how have you guys been doing rotors for a while, or is that a newer thing? Or
yeah, so with Tektro being our parent company, they're actually a massive corporation, one of the largest brake manufacturers for bikes in the industry.
So
in the world.
So are they a company that's like building these brakes for other people, or?
So Tektro makes brakes for themselves. I'll say we own our own factory. So all the factories are done in-house. So nothing's outsourced. We're not building brakes for SRAM or Shimano. We do various contracted projects, as any factory in Taiwan will, where someone says, hey, I've got this crazy project and I want to pay you money to produce it. That's what a factory does.
Right.
So we do some projects like that, but all of those are kind of confidential, and we don't really talk about that too much. But Tektro does all the brakes in-house. A few things there's outsourced, like nuts and bolts, because there's one guy who makes 10 million bolts a year, and he can make them for way cheaper than we can make our own bolts. So things like that we'll buy, but all the calipers they come in as rock extruded aluminum, and then they get stamped and pressed and CNC'd, cleaned out, assembled, painted, polished, and then packaged all in one warehouse. Probably, you can walk from the start of the production line to the end in about 10 minutes.
So that all being in one location then probably does a lot for your quality control then.
Yeah, and that's been one of Tektro's biggest things is being the underdog or the smaller company when you're competing with a name like Shimano or SRAM. There's no room for failure. We can't have say, oh, we messed up on this model of brake, so we need to recall 50,000 of them. So for us, it's not acceptable to have failures. And obviously, when you're making 6 million brakes a year, a few are going to get through. But for us, it's been reducing that number. And the way Tektro does that is every single hydraulic brake, Tektro or TRP, no matter the price, that leaves our factory gets tested, 100% quality control check. So it gets put on a dyno where it's going to cycle the brake and just squeeze the lever. Does that about 250 times. And then it presses and holds the lever, so the whole system's under pressure for about 2 minutes. They hang them up for 36 hours, let them sit, look for any oil leaking, and then put it back on the dyno for another 250 cycles, held for another 2 minutes, inspected and packaged. And that's from everything from the brake that comes on your $800 mountain bike to the brake that comes on your, YT Aaron Gwin special edition bike. And so you're looking at, we probably make 2 to 4 million hydraulic brakes a year, and everything that leaves is tested to that level. Wow,
that's crazy.
Which on some $800 mountain bikes, the 500 cycles it sees in the factory is more than it sees in the life of the brake.
Probably. I know I bought my fair share of used bikes, and a lot of them were high-end bikes that had like 3 rides on them. So
yeah,
there's definitely some bicycles being purchased that aren't being used for what they're for. I just had a conversation with a guy the other day that was like, just one of those like an Uber driver or something like that. And he was like, oh yeah, I'm going to get a bike. I'm gonna start riding bikes. And he's like, yeah, I'm probably getting a mountain bike. And I'm like, so are you going to be like riding on trails or what? No, I'm just going to ride around town and stuff. And I'm like, so like, check this out, bud. If you want a mountain bike, get a mountain bike if you're going to be on the dirt. If you're going to ride around town, there's so many bikes that are like way more efficient for that. You're fucking wasting your time and your money getting a mountain bike.
And, yeah, and more affordable and or if you want to spend the same amount of money, you get a nicer bike if you're not paying for suspension and tires that are meant to go over rocks.
Right, exactly. I know the first time that I ever like I was a strictly mountain biker for a long time, and I decided to buy a single speed, like, you know, road bike basically. And because I was like, oh, I could commute to work. It's only like 16 miles and that'll like burn some calories and then I can drink more beer. That'd be awesome. And so I bought this bike, man. And the first time I like rode it, I was like blown away by how fast I could go. You know, it's like, holy shit. If you're actually using the right tool for the job, it's crazy how much better it is, you know?
Yeah.
Before that, I was just using a hammer for everything. All of a sudden I'm like, holy shit, there's screwdrivers out there, you know?
Yeah.
So, the rotors that you guys have, are they more like, do you have just that like one line, or do you have like different levels of those? Is it kind of like, here's a 2-part rotor, here's a 1-part rotor, here's the Ice Tech equivalent or whatever?
Yeah, so we've got about three different, you know, types of rotors you can get. One is a one piece, which is pretty standard, going to be good for your everyday rider. It's pretty affordable. It's one piece of, you know, steel. So they'll just get, you know, a huge extruded piece of steel and they'll just slice out rotors essentially. Once the slice is taken, they'll go through and drill it out, put the holes and the slots and all that stuff. Right. But essentially the one piece is going to be cost effective and performance wise, it's going to do the job. The 2-piece rotor uses an aluminum center carrier. So the center piece is aluminum and the outside is steel, the braking surface. Having the aluminum carrier, it dissipates heat better because aluminum dissipates heat better than steel.
Right.
You have more material there, therefore you have more surface area. But aluminum is lighter than steel. So by making the center of the rotor aluminum, you can actually save weight, decrease heat, and increase performance. So it's kind of a win-win on all areas except for your wallet. So they're going to cost a little bit more.
Right.
And then we have 2-piece center lock, which is mostly because Shimano invented center lock hubs and you can't put 6 bolts on center lock. So both of those are 2-piece options.
Does it seem like a lot of people use center lock to you, like what you guys see in your sales? Because for me, I'll be honest, like whenever I've considered it, every time I decide not to is like for this reason. I'm like, if I get a 6-bolt hub, I know that if Shimano decides center lock goes away next year, I'm still going to be able to get products because that's what everybody else does. Like, even if it may be, and this, you know, is completely arguable or whatever, if it's better, yeah, that's great. But I'd rather have something that I can have for longevity than something that may be like nominally better, probably on just some kind of scientific test or something.
Yeah, I mean, so I can tell you center lock is, you know, easier to install and remove. And I travel a lot with my bike for, you know, testing and OEM meetings and such. And I have to take my rotors off when I fly with them because if I don't, they get bent and warped and rubbed. So I really wish I had center lock. The problem is not everyone makes center lock hubs. If you're buying a used wheel set, you have to buy what someone already had. Most people don't use center lock for mountain bikes. So they're harder to find. So I just end up with 6-bolt.
Didn't Shimano just come out with something new too?
They came out with the micro spline for cassettes.
That's what it was. Yeah. I think that's what I was mixing up with too. They're always they got a marketing department. It's like, hey, let's just make some changes and everybody will buy new shit.
Yeah. I mean, as much as it seems being on the inside, you kind of see and you talk to customers and there are reasons for it. It's just not always a reason that is worth explaining. Because you'll say, oh, well, it's going to save this much weight and allow things to be stronger. And in Shimano, you know, in the back of their mind, maybe they have some product, some crazy new invention they're working on that's going to come in 2 years that has to use this, you know, micro spline technology. And to you right now, you're like, well, that's stupid. It already worked fine. Why'd you change it? But they have this new technology that they can't tell you about yet, but they have to have microspline for it to work. And if they introduce it and nobody uses microspline, then how are they going to sell it?
Right. I got it.
Same with SRAM and XD drivers. They didn't need it when they were doing a 1042 cassette because they could have made it an 1144 and it would have worked fine. But to do the 1050 tooth range that they do with Eagle, they needed an XD driver. And you don't want to introduce a crazy new giant cassette and a new free hub driver all at once. And you're going to leave the customers super confused and not want to buy it.
Or just flat out pissed off because they got to go buy new hubs or something like that. And this new cassette that's $400.
Yeah, exactly. And it kind of happens that, with the whole boost thing, everyone was real pissed about boost. Oh, now my wheels won't work. But now every new bike people buy, they brag about how short their chain stays are and how quick their bike handles. And that's all made possible by boost. At the time when it happened, nobody thought they needed it. But
to me, as soon as it came out, like I drank the Kool-Aid right out the gate. And I think it's because I'm a bigger guy and, they're talking about more stability and stuff like that. And for me, I was like, well, that makes sense. I can totally get that. So when I bought my Bronson, that was one of the key things where I was like, I'm getting a bike. Well, like I knew I was buying a new bike. So there was no way I wasn't buying a bike that didn't have boost because I knew that it was going to be, maybe everybody wasn't jumping on board right out the gate, but it was like, I want to keep this bike for a while. So I know I want that,
Yeah.
So somebody asked here earlier, and I'm going to read this because I don't have a clue what he's talking about, but you probably will. So he says, will you guys be offering a product comparable to the Tetro E725 with the rise of e-bikes on the mountain bike scene?
Yeah, so you can actually, I think it's live on our site because I'm pretty sure I put it on there, but we do have a new e-bike brake coming for TRP. It may not be, identically comparable to the Tektro 725, but we have, so that model is the Zurich, and that's for more European stuff on the road where they have to have cutoff switches. And that's what that wire you see is. It goes to the engine, so you're not braking and pedaling at the same time, or braking and engaging the motor, which would drain the battery.
Right. That also just doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah, and you'd be surprised, but it's the law over there. So you actually have to have the cutoff switch.
Okay.
And then some bikes in the U.S., like commuter bikes, will use that cutoff switch as a brake light. So when you squeeze the lever, it sends a signal and it lights up your brake light just like a car would.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
Yeah, and then we have the G-Spec EMTB, which is kind of our e-bike performance brake. So it has some features and technology geared towards obviously a heavier bike, higher speeds, and longer distances. And that will kind of be our first step into the e-bike realm. And that brake's pretty cool.
So would it be safe to say that with e-bikes coming out and ultimately them trying to cut the weight of those things, that we could in the future be seeing better brakes that are lighter just because of that industry kind of pushing the brakes?
Well, e-bikes are wanting to get lighter, but I don't think the brakes are an area they're looking to shave weight yet. Right. I think what you'll get from e-bike brakes is more powerful brakes and brakes that work better with heat. And heavier and braking with heavier loads, I guess. Right. Is the idea. Because if I weigh 160 pounds, if my bike weighs 30 pounds, you're looking at a 190 pound ride. If I'm riding a 50-pound bike and I weigh 160 pounds, you're looking at a 210-pound ride, which is 10% heavier. Yeah. And so you need the ability to, have 10% more braking power in theory. And then I'm going to be traveling at an average of 20 miles an hour because that's when the engine maxes out. So why wouldn't I go uphill as fast as possible? And so you're going to be braking going uphill. You're going to be braking going downhill. With the engine, you're probably going to be riding, 50% farther. So you're going to go through the pads more. But if you're braking uphill and downhill, your brakes are going to be a lot hotter the whole time. So there's a lot of issues around heat dissipation, durability, and consistency with e-bikes and the loads these guys are putting them under.
So basically what you just said to me is that I need to get e-brake brakes for my Bronson because I'm a fat ass.
I didn't want to say that to you, but
it could
essentially
work.
if you got that brake, I think you'd be very pleased with it.
That's awesome. That totally made me forget what the hell I wanted to ask you, but it's all good. That's some good shit there. What are you seeing in the like if you're like looking into the future, what kind of changes do you think there's going to be happening in the brake industry?
I think that the big thing that the brake industry as a whole is struggling with right now is consistency in performance. You have a lot of I got to get my brake bled or
well, I lost him. So in the meantime, I'm just going to keep talking until he comes back. Oh, there he is.
Am I back?
Yeah.
Cool. I think the big thing is the brakes being more, my opinion, being more consistent, requiring less service. I don't know how that's going to be done by other companies, but I know that's a big thing for us is with bikes going more consumer direct and people wanting to service things on their own, making service easier, more accessible, but also less frequent.
So are you guys using mineral oil or DOT?
So we use mineral oil
on
sweet. All our brakes since Tektro started 30 years ago.
Well, that's good because for those of you guys that don't know what we're talking about right there, basically DOT is what SRAM uses. Mineral oil, I can't even fucking say that. Mineral oil is what Shimano typically uses. And the downside to DOT is that it will like erode things that it gets on. So like it could screw up your paint or something like that. I think the plus side to DOT, correct me if I'm wrong, Cody, the plus side is that it can hold a higher temperature of heat and maybe not dissipate over time as much as the mineral oil. Is that correct?
Yeah. So DOT fluid is corrosive. So if you're bleeding your brake and you spill a little on your lever or your frame and you don't clean it off right away, it can eat away at the paint and basically that paint will fall off. You are not supposed to grain, A, because it's a hazardous material, but B, because it can slowly eat away at your pipes and you'll have a leaky pipe. Mineral oil I wouldn't call it safe. Like I wouldn't go drink a bottle of it, but if you spill it on your bike or you get it on your hands, basically your skin's going to be real soft, kind of like you use lotion. Mm-hmm. and then you're going to go on with your day. DOT fluid is less susceptible to heat change. So it will work at like, below 0 temperatures and it will, has a higher boiling point. So it will, it's a little higher performing in a sense, but bikes don't typically get to the heats where you're going to boil mineral oil. Right. And maybe some people do, but I don't ride my bike if it's below like 10 degrees out. Yeah. Personally.
Yeah. And if you had a reverb dropper, you're definitely not riding your bike at that temperature because apparently those things don't work when it gets cold.
Yeah. Most seat droppers in general. Suspension doesn't work very well when the seals are frozen, obviously. Right. And then DOT fluid tends to mix with the environment a little bit, and so that's how you get air bubbles a little easier and a brake that can require more service than a mineral oil brake. Mm-hmm. Mineral oil brakes tend to, once you bleed it, you can kind of run it a little longer than you're supposed to without any issues. Whereas a DOT brake, you'll bleed it, and then kind of on time it will say, okay, you need to bleed this because it's going to stop working. Or if you flip it upside down, the lever will pull to the bar, kind of thing. Uh-huh. They both work great. Over my years, I've ridden a lot of DOT fluid brakes, and obviously now a lot of mineral oil brakes, and they all work good. So I'm not saying one's better than the other, and that's a debate. That's like, is the iPhone or the Samsung better? Yeah, not a debate I want to be in the middle of.
Yeah. It's a religious debate. I definitely understand where you're coming from there. I think at the end of the day, what you said is they both work, and I think that's true. For me, I think the difference is what is easier for me to work on, where I don't have to worry about something up, and mineral oil like takes the cake there. So
they definitely have pros and cons, and there's in my opinion a lot of reasons why we chose mineral oil that I would agree with. So
yeah, definitely. I'm on board there as well. So the other thing I wanted to ask you earlier, whenever I got hung up with your comment about how much I weighed. No, just kidding. Was do you guys have like some kind of heat sink type of fins on your brake pads, or are you using I assume you're making your own pads, right?
Yeah. So we do all our pads in house. I've actually seen it. It's pretty cool. They lay them out like you're baking cookies, and then put the stuff on and put it in the oven and basically bake the pad material. So we don't have any heat sinks on our pads. We do that with the rotors, or not the rotors, sorry, the caliper. So if you look at our, like the Quadium caliper, it's pretty big, beefy caliper, similar to a Saint, but probably a little larger than a Saint. And then we have these machine grooves in the top, which are your cooling fins. And that just, by machining that out, gives some more room for the heat to dissipate. And then the larger caliper gives you more material to absorb heat, and then obviously more surface area to dissipate heat through it. And then inside our calipers, we actually use a hybrid ceramic steel piston. So it's a steel piston with a ceramic puck on the inside. That ceramic puck absorbs the heat, helps prevent any fluid boil or the fluid getting heated up. So we have some different ways of kind of doing those tricks. And obviously we're always looking into ways to improve the brakes. But fins on the caliper at the moment are not the most important thing to improve on the brakes, I think. I think it's
For me, like I felt like I had the Guide Ultimates, and I felt like or the reason that I ended up getting rid of them was not because the braking power wasn't there. It was just because they would, in my opinion, they weren't dissipating heat well enough. So my pads would get like glazed over, and then I'd have like this pack of turkeys or chipmunks or whatever you want to call them chasing me around, and that was one of the things that I knew, that with like Shimano's, like they had that heat sink there or whatever, their Ice Tech rotors just looked like they would dissipate heat even better than the center lines by SRAM. So when I switched over, I don't have any problems with them at all until like a long day of downhill. Like they'll start to howl at the end of the day, but not before then. So I'd be interested in trying out your brakes. I really would be, just to kind of see where they stack up,
Yeah, definitely. We'll have to, once those e-bike brakes are available, we'll have to get you set up with a pair.
I definitely don't need them with the brake light on the back, because we don't want anybody knowing how much I'm using my brakes. That would suck. That's awesome. So what else do you guys see any other things in the future as far as like product development for you guys that you're kind of trying to focus towards? Or
I mean, nothing specific that I can speak on.
Right.
But we're always looking to improve our products to make them more reliable. If there's a way we can make it more affordable or perform better, kind of all three of those, or lighter. And then we're always looking at other products, where there's a need, and maybe there's a product that we don't think is being done well, or it's being done well, it's easy to replicate, but people are being overcharged for it.
Right.
Or maybe where there's only one person or two companies making the specific product. So, we think there needs to be a third player to, give a little more open, fair market and keep everyone challenged. So that's always something we're looking into, but obviously that's not something we can talk about until the day of the announcement of whatever it is.
Right. So when you started there, did they take you over to like the manufacturing facility and let you kind of see that, or they just like showed you like what was there in Utah, or what kind of like, how did you get the experience with how they do things?
So it wasn't until I started working on the OEM side, which in the industry we call that product. So that's guys who are designing bikes, guys who are selling parts to go directly on those bikes stock. So until I started working in product, I had not been over to Taiwan. But there's a big, not a show, but kind of a get together where everyone says, we're going to all be in Taiwan for this 1 week, and then we're going to hash out everything. So the guy who's making the bike can say, well, we wanted these brakes made this way so they'd fit on our bike better. We can go through all those issues. And that was last October. I went over there, and that was my first time being to the factory, first time in Asia. And that's kind of when they gave me the whole factory tour. And so I was over there for a day and a half, and they gave me the tour, and then asked me to go give GCN the tour of the factory and have their presenter do a full 20-minute factory tour thing. So that's kind of where I got all these lines pretty well versed. Was when you're working with those guys, you gotta make sure you have your stuff ready and ready to do it, because their time is valuable.
Right. So basically you got the tour, and then you had to do the tour, like give the tour immediately after.
Yeah. So I got the tour, and then a day later I just had to write down some notes, and then I went through it with the GCN guy. And luckily they didn't put me on camera, but I was basically standing behind him, and they'd film a clip, come over and say, okay, now this is what we're doing here, right? And this is what I should say, right? And we'd say, yeah, and then he'd go back to doing it. And there were a few other guys there helping me make sure we had all the answers right, but I was in charge of not getting lost in the factory with them.
I bet you felt like you had a fucking shitload of pressure on you at that point. You're like, oh God, don't fuck this up.
Yeah, I had one guy from the Tectra side who works in the factory with me. So if he wasn't there, we would have got lost in there and never found our way out.
How long were you over there?
I was over. That trip was 2 weeks.
Uh-huh.
So I was over at the factory for a few days, and then we had a bunch of meetings for about a week, and then some kind of follow up and marketing meetings, just because the factory is also the headquarters. So
did you get to ride bikes while you were there?
I did. I got to one of my coworkers on the Taiwan side wanted me his road bike, and so I got to do actually some group rides with a bunch of the industry people who were all over there, and that was pretty cool. A little wild. Yeah. And then, there was no mountain biking done on that trip. So it's just some road biking in the city. Yeah.
Either way, though, I mean, it's still pretty cool. Did you get to do any like sightseeing or anything like that, or did you go to maybe like any other factories other than the stuff that you guys are working on? Or
I didn't actually get to go to any other factories that trip. I did a little sightseeing on the bike rides. We rode out to some farmlands and stuff, which was pretty cool, and get deep in the jungle, and it's a wild place. There's they don't have fences, dogs run in the street, and somehow the dogs in Taiwan are smarter than the dogs in the US, and they don't get hit by cars. A lot of people there also don't drive cars, they ride scooters.
Right.
Which is pretty crazy to see. You're in a city and you're at a stoplight and there's 2 cars and then about 50 people on scooters.
Yeah.
And they just take off like this whole mob of people on scooters, and you're sitting there with your bike sprinting to try and keep up with them and not get run over.
So are you guys are selling, I assume, internationally, so you're in Europe as well and stuff like that?
Yeah. So we sell off our website to anywhere in the world. We'll ship, worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
Tectro Taiwan will sell within Asia. Our headquarters is in Utah, and then we're planning to open a European headquarters pretty soon, within the next couple months. And so that will make European distribution a little easier. But mainly we rely on a network of distributors all over the world. So in Canada, we have Live to Play, which is similar to QBP here in the States. And in the UK, we have a brand called Upgrade. They're a distributor, so they do TRP. They own DMR, which is like Brennan Faircloth's signature pedal and grips. They distribute for several other companies.
Right on.
So we have distributors everywhere, and that's kind of how we get our product to the local markets.
So what about the brake industry was surprising to you when you got into it?
Not too much. It's tricky because I think everyone has their judgments about this brake's good, this brake's bad. Having raced for years, you have various sponsors, and you end up on several different brands over time. And I came into TRP saying, okay, I've never heard of these guys really. I've never ridden their brakes. We'll see how good they are. And I was surprised how everyone makes a really good product, and it's just kind of subtleties in the way the product works that makes a difference. It's kind of like with trail bikes today. You're not going to buy a trail bike that doesn't work well, but you might buy one that descends better and doesn't climb as well, or one that's more geared towards climbing but maybe doesn't descend as well. And it's all personal preference. It's kind of like your Shimano Saints are going to have a ton of power right at the beginning and super snappy, and maybe a little grabby. And some people don't like that, so they like a TRP or a SRAM where it's a little smoother at the beginning and it's not as grabby, because if you're a lighter rider or you're riding, smaller knobs, you might have issues with traction. Out here on the East Coast in the wet routes and stuff, having a real grabby brake is not good. And then there's some people who, prefer a SRAM to a TRP for various reasons, or vice versa. So I think they're all pretty good products. You get differences in when they need to be serviced and that sort of thing. But again, it's all a personal preference thing.
So I would assume that you're running TRP brakes on your bike, right?
Yeah.
And what kind of bike you riding?
So I've got a cross-country bike and a trail bike. So I'm riding an Evil Reckoning as my trail bike. The Pisgah around here is basically downhill riding. Like I ride with a convertible full-face helmet and knee pads all the time. So that's, it's basically a mini downhill bike.
What helmet are you using?
The Bell Super DH.
Oh, nice. I just got that helmet actually, and that thing's really fucking comfortable, man.
Yeah, 10 out of 10 would recommend anyone. I'm not sponsored. I bought it. I paid for it, and I got all my buddies bought it too, and we all.
The only thing that I can say about that helmet compared to like the Fox Pro frame that I saw some other guys riding is that the front of the Pro frame is open, so you can actually just like stick your Camelback like hose right in there. Where like the Bell one, you still got to kind of fish it up under your chin or whatever. But if that's like the worst thing that I could come up with, I don't really think it's that big of a fucking deal.
Yeah, my only complaint is that I can't wear glasses with it. For some reason, the way the back end sits, it hits the glasses and makes your glasses shake when you're riding. But it has goggle storage on the visor, so I just ride with goggles, and then mud doesn't get in my eyes ever.
Right on.
And to me, the whole idea is that you take the chin bar off when you're going uphill, and you shouldn't be drinking out of your Camelback when you're going downhill.
Right.
And
I just wore the damn thing all day. I think in my head, like I'll use my like kind of like half lid for normal riding or whatever. Whenever I feel like I need some extra protection, I'm just going to be using it as a full face. But those like convertible kind of full face helmets are really the ones that have, to me, like at least what I'm seeing is like some of the best like ventilation and really, kind of dialed away that way. And then having that option, maybe if I am going to be somewhere where I'm a pedal for a bunch before I'm doing that like gnarly downhill, then maybe I'll do that.
Yeah, where we're at, it'll be, a 10-15 minute downhill where you want a full face and knee pads on, and then you get to the bottom, and then it's a 20 or 30 minute climb out of that valley to the next ridge line. And you want a helmet on because you're always going over rocks and logs, and you don't want to fall and hit your head. But you don't want that chin bar on, so you just reach back, unclip the two in the back one, and then just, you can either clip it onto your, your fanny pack or your Camelback, or, I have one where I'll just throw it inside. Yeah. And it takes you 30 seconds, and then you're going up the hill with nothing in front of your face. You can breathe clearly. You can pick your nose. You can drink the Camelback, whatever you want. And then you get to the top, you slap it back on. It takes you 30 seconds. And then you're fully safe to go down and face plant as much as you want.
Yeah, right. So the reason I asked though about the brakes that you were riding was like, what are the things that stand out to you then now that you've been using the TRP for a while? Like if you were talking to one of your buddies about why, hey dude, get this brake instead of that brake, like what are the things that stand out to you?
So the biggest thing with the most important to me is the reliability and consistency. They are super reliable. I won't say they always work because nothing always works. Everything will fail at some point. Right. But they're super reliable and consistent. I've never had to bleed my brakes. Coming from racing, I'm real picky, and I want my brakes to feel absolutely perfect with no sponge. So I will bleed my brakes occasionally, but I don't have to bleed them. I haven't had them fail on the trail. issues like that. And then other than that, it's the modulation. So what I mean by modulation is I guess it's like the power curve. So similar to a spring curve, you have some bikes that are more progressive and some that are more linear.
Mhm.
Our brakes are very linear, so it's intuitive. If you squeeze 10% harder, you get 10% more brake power.
Mhm.
So, you know, sometimes people complain, I have to squeeze these brakes really hard for them to brake super hard. But on the other side, when you want to just, you know, squeeze 7.5% of the brake power, you don't accidentally squeeze, you know, a hair too hard and it locks up the wheel.
Yeah, and I can relate with that, what you were saying about Shimano earlier. You know, I do like that bite on the front end of them, but sometimes it definitely is a little grabby whenever you're just trying to like do that real light touch somewhere, you know.
Yeah, and the guys at the Lone Wolf, it's a website. I don't know if you've seen it. You know, similar to Pink Bike or Vital.
Right.
They did a really good review on our brake where they explain, you know, why you might like this brake or why you might have issues with that type of braking power. And, you know, they just laid it out kind of the way I did, where it's a personal preference thing. Some people like, boom, instant power and that snap. And some people like to be able to scrub, you know, a precise amount of speed so that they're never stopping. They just want enough that they don't crash in the corner.
Right.
And I think for me, coming from racing, that's what I want. I want ultimate control because I don't want to stop when I'm riding. I just want to slow down enough.
Right. And I think, I mean, even as a Shimano rider, I think your brain kind of like learns how to feather that, you know, but
yeah, absolutely.
But I think that you definitely do have some situations where it is a little grabby. And I could, like, to me, it's like the low speed stuff, you know, maybe you're climbing or something like that, or you like bump your fucking brake because you're dicking around with something else and you're like, whoa, you know. So I think for me, like, I honestly could ride a
your
brake.
Your buddies don't reach over and slap your front brake when you're climbing.
And then there's that too.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think for me, I could kind of take a break that works either way. Like at the end of the day, for me, I just want a break that really works and then doesn't fade over time. You know, that's the one that's just a real pain in the ass. You know, especially when you're doing something like a Downeyville or something like that, where you got, you know, 5,000-6,000 feet of elevation that you're dropping over, you know, an hour or two, and like a cheaper break will definitely, like, it'll start to fade away. And I always tell people, like, you never know that you have shitty brakes until you get better ones.
Yeah.
You know, you're like, oh, my brakes are fine, you know, and then you get some better ones and you're like, holy shit, man, my brakes were crappy as fuck, you know?
Yeah.
Or
no, it's definitely a personal preference thing, because I've met guys who come from Shimano and say, oh, I love your brakes, this control is amazing. And then I've met guys who come from Shimano, ride them, and say, I'm just a grabby brake guy, I guess. I like Shimano and I'm going to go back to that, and I like that. Yeah, I think that's the whole goal of the industry, is you can get what you want, right? Not that TRP rules the world and you only buy our brakes, but it's that if you don't want a grabby brake, there's an option. And if you don't want dot fluid, there's an option.
I think the other thing too is, like, the only way that you're really going to know that is by trying different stuff, you know, and that's one of the things that I recognize now that I've been doing the channel for a while, and I've been on a bunch of different bikes, and you know, when I wasn't doing the channel, I wasn't going out and renting bikes for the fuck of it, because I had a bike and I didn't need to spend any more money on renting somebody else's shit, right? You know, and like, it was like, you know, hey, we're going to go ride this place, you could rent a DH bike. I'm like, I don't care. I got a bike. I don't need to rent. You know what I mean? and so, like, over time, though, of trying different stuff, or, you know, or just like in longevity of a mountain biking career, like riding like on your own, you know, you're like, oh, I've tried this because I broke my old ones and I upgraded or whatever. And that it really takes all that experience to even start understanding what people are talking about, you know, with modulation or something being grabby or not. Like, if you would have talked to me about that before I started the channel, I probably didn't have a clue what you were talking about.
Yeah. And that kind of brings us back to the whole outdoor demo thing. And I think that's the reason why those are growing so much, is people are realizing, you know, the whole industry, all the products are getting so good that it's becoming less of, oh, this one's clearly better than that one, or clearly Tran is better than Shimano. And now it's, well, if you like this is the one you want. If you like that, that's the one you want. So it's more of a preference than a clear choice.
Yeah, I just don't. I think, you know, and I agree with you. I think that people should definitely be going to these events, and I think that's where you'll probably see more like the Interbike, that outdoor demo thing getting bigger, and I think that kind of stuff is really important for people to go out and do. And it's fun to be around a bunch of new people, or like around a bunch of people in the industry, and B, it's really cool to be able to have an event like that, or a Sedona. I know they have some back east too, like something down in Florida, and I think there's something else up in your area too that's like,
yeah, there's, you know, Dirt Fest up in Pennsylvania,
right? You know, you pay like $80 for the day or whatever it is, and you can, you know, demo as many bikes as you can, as long as you're there at freaking the crack of dawn. And you know, but I mean, at the end of the day, like, I think that stuff's important, especially when you're trying to make a decision on buying a bike. I hate when people, like, not hate, but when people ask me, they're like, what bike should I buy? It's like, dude, you could ask a million people, none of them are going to have the answer that's right for you. You need to go out and like try it.
Yeah. Yeah. I could usually point you to 2 to 3 bikes based on what you want.
Right.
But I couldn't make you choose.
Right. And even then, you know, a lot of guys, especially when they're just starting, they're like, well, I don't know what to get. There is a lot of bikes out there, and it is definitely intimidating to go out and make a purchase that could be, you know, a couple $1,000, even if it's on the low end. I mean, $1,500, if that's what your budget is, that's a lot of money to you. You know what I mean? And to go out and like just decide, it's just really tough, you know. But ultimately, like, you really have to go out there and put your ass on the saddle and figure out what it is that you want.
Yeah.
You know, like, yeah, it's crazy how the industry has changed over the years. I know I took like a little bit of a hiatus in my riding. And when I got back into it, like, I walked into the shop thinking I was going to spend $2,000 and get like a badass bike. And I asked the guy, you know, I'm like, hey, I want to get a mountain bike. And he's like, you want an XC bike? You want a trail bike? You want an enduro bike? Do you want a downhill bike? And I'm like, dude, I said mountain bike. You know, like,
yeah.
So I mean, shit's definitely changed. So when you were racing, somebody said you raced EWS in the chats.
Yeah. I did a few of those. Did 2 years. I did 3 of those. And then I raced a bunch in North America, and I actually started doing cross country, and then picked up downhill, and then enduro kind of became a thing.
What was your favorite place that you rode?
Road or raced?
Let's start with raced, and then we'll go to road.
There's a few, but obviously Whistler's got to be on the list.
Yeah,
it's Whistler, and that was one of the only races that I've been scared at the start. Like, it rained, and they were some of the gnarliest stages out of the whole series. And you're looking at, you know, 18 minutes of off-camber wet routes on black diamond trails that everyone rides on downhill bikes, and you're trying to sprint down it for 20 minutes on a trail bike when it's just dumped for 2 days. And so I actually put flat pedals on for that race and rode flats, because I figured it was better to finish a little further back than to finish with a broken wrist or something.
Yeah.
Other than that, I really enjoy Downeyville a lot. I think that's probably my favorite event. It's cross country and downhill, and the downhill is no joke. You have to know how to ride your bike to go down that fast. Yeah. But you also have to know how to pace yourself, and you have to be in tune with your body to do well in the downhill, not just the XC. And I think it's one of the best competitions to see who is the most well-rounded mountain bike rider. And not just who's the best at going downhill or who's the best at going uphill. You have to kind of do it all.
It's funny that Downeyville, and maybe I'm not speaking correctly, but correct me if you think I'm wrong. I think Downeyville really doesn't get the name that it deserves. Like, as far as like what the trails there have, like, I feel like people are like, oh, the only thing that's on the West Coast is like the PNW and like Whistler, you know?
Yeah, I mean, the Downeyville trails are pretty awesome. There's some other trails up there that blow the Downeyville trail out of the water. Like, there's a trail up at Gray Eagle that's probably one of the best trails I've ever ridden in my life.
What was that?
It wasn't Gray Eagle is what it's called.
Yeah. Do you remember the name of the trail?
I don't remember the name. I just was following some people and they said you're gonna like it, and I did. But it was not overly gnarly. It wasn't smooth and flowy. It was just kind of rocks, and all of a sudden you're just doubling from one rock to another, and it's like a downhill pump track made out of rocks and drifty turns, and you're at 7,000 feet in the Sierras.
Right. Was it kind of pedally?
I didn't find it to be pedally.
I think Mills Peak is like right in that area, and I think that might be what you're talking about.
Yeah, it might have been that. It was recently built, but it was super fun. It was just like a really fun trail. The stuff in the Pacific Northwest is fun because it scares you.
Yeah.
And you can go ride. You know, I've ridden some of the gnarlier stuff up there, and it scares me. And there aren't many trails these days that I really get scared on, and it's always fun to go. You know. Be challenged just to make it down.
Right. I mean, I watch some of that shit that BC POV puts on his channel, man, and they're just like, I know from being a content creator that when something looks steep as fuck on video, it's insanely fucking steep in real life.
Yeah.
Like I just did this ride up in Mount Huff, which is kind of in that Gray Eagle area, a little bit close to there where you're just talking about. And the first, like, I don't know, man, I bet you it's probably like a little bit more than a quarter mile right out of the parking lot. I bet you lose like 1,000 feet elevation. Like if it's a half a mile, I'd be surprised. Like it is insane how much elevation you lose. And you're like right out the parking lot, not warmed up. You know what I mean? Like you just like roll over the lip of the parking lot and all of a sudden it's like, boom, it's on. And, I just looked at the video after when I got to the house and I was like, it looks like I'm in a fucking parking lot, you know?
Yeah.
Just ridiculous. So
yeah,
right on, man.
People talk a lot of smack on the internet, and then when you get them out for the trail, they're like, oh, actually, I won't ride that.
Yeah. And you know, I think to be a content creator, A, you have to have thick skin, and B, you kind of have to not you can't take that shit serious. I mean, especially me, it's like when I started my channel, I mean, look at me, dude. I'm not a pillar of fitness. Obviously, I'm not going to be the fastest guy out there on the trail. I'm out there having a good time. That's what it's about to me. But, you know, we are all men, you know, and at the end of the day, you know, when somebody is digging on you, sometimes you're like, what the fuck, man? You know?
Yeah.
But I think generally speaking, most mountain bikers that aren't sitting behind a keyboard are pretty fucking cool guys, you know.
Yeah.
And I think it's just that keyboard that gets to people. They're like, oh, I can say whatever the fuck I want. These people don't have feelings, you know, and whatever, dude. You know, who gives a shit, man? I'm still out there having a good time, as is everybody else, and so it is what it is. So, do you have any? So you're coming into winter for you. Are you guys able to ride all season where you're at, or?
Yeah, I've lived here for about 5 years now, and there's usually 2 to 3 days a year where I guess you can ride. You don't really want to. You know, we'll get the freak, below 15 degrees where you just take a day off. But for the most part, you can ride most of the winter. The area of Wilson's Creek, the bottom of it is at 2,000 feet, and the top is at close to 5. So in the summer, when it's hot down in Charlotte, and the southern heat wave, it's about 75 degrees up at my house.
Right.
So I'll ride up in the high country essentially, and we'll ride the upper half of Pisgah and stuff. And then in the winter, it usually doesn't get below 30, especially not for the high down in somewhere like Charlotte or Morganton, which is near the bottom. So we'll actually just drive down the hill about 30 to 40 minutes and just start our ride from down there. So when you start, it's 45 degrees and you're climbing up, you're sweating by the time you get to the top. You put a jacket on, you rip back down, and it felt like a summer day.
Yeah, it sounds similar to kind of like what we do here, like as far as like driving up to Tahoe to kind of get away from the heat. And I know a lot of those guys, once it starts snowing up there, if they're not skiing or snowboarding, they're driving back down the hill here to ride. Which is cool. Like for me, like where we live, it's just, here in Northern California, we're pretty blessed to have like monster elevation that we can get to quickly. And then in the wintertime, it's like the way that the dirt is here, it just really makes for some really sweet sweet dirt once it starts raining and stuff like that, you know, and you're like, winter time, everybody's bitching about not being able to ride. And we're like, our trails are like freaking on point right now, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I know. Growing up in the LA area, I know how that goes. The winter is the best time to ride there. I think that's why I did good with racing. And I think that's why a lot of good racers come out of California, is because when everyone else is toughing it out and riding the trainer and getting through winter, these guys are just riding tons of miles. And then by the time race season comes around, they're pretty fast and they race all summer, and then it's hot and they're ready to be done, and they rest, and then winter comes and you're ready to do it all again.
Yeah, I know for me, like in August, I kind of didn't ride for a little bit, and everybody else is like, you know, trying to get the last of their summer out. And I'm like, it's too fucking hot. It's like fires and shit, dude. I don't give a shit, man. I don't go sit at the river and drink beer instead of riding bikes, you know?
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
I just bought speaking of winter, I just bought a pair of skis. So those are my plans for the winter. I got they're cross country trail skis. So I'm going to be skiing hopefully some of the stuff I mountain bike if we get enough snow.
Right on.
That way, when the good weather comes around, I'm excited to ride my bike. And, you know, I didn't just ride through the snow all winter and I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'll ride now that it's warm.
When I was in Norway for a while up in the Arctic Circle, and the kids up there at lunchtime, like when they go out to recess, they like cross country ski around like the school. It's like that's what they do for fun up there. It was kind of a trip to see that, you know. I mean, I grew up in Pennsylvania, so I mean we'd have snow in the wintertime, stuff like that, but we weren't heading out the door with skis on, you know.
Yeah.
So what is it that you miss about riding in California?
I mean, a lot of the trails I grew up riding, and I think everyone has a special place in their heart for the trails they learned to ride on.
Mm-hmm.
And just, you know, coming back to the same features that you remember being, you know, for me, I remember being 12 years old thinking, man, it would be so cool if I could just ride that drop. Like I would be the coolest guy ever. And now I'm hitting that drop and I'm like, this is easy. And I'm, you know, do a wheelie off it or whatever. And seeing that progression through the years. And even now, you know, I rode something last year that I'd never ridden before, or rode a new line, and being able to progress on these trails that you've been riding for 10 or 15 years, I think is pretty cool. Obviously the year round riding and being able to go to a place like Laguna where you can do 5,000 feet of climbing and descending and ride super gnarly trails, and then pedal 2 minutes on the road and be at the beach and jump in the water instead of taking a shower. Like that's pretty hard to beat all in one.
So what's the plus side to the riding back east where you're at?
Well, the average summer high is about 75 degrees where I live. It's not humid. The trails are green. The dirt's black. It's not sand. So that's pretty hard to beat. There's tons of trails that are just deep in the backcountry, and you're not coming out in the middle of the city and stuff. So it's pretty polar opposite to California, but a lot of super gnarly stuff, and we kind of go get lost in the woods. Yeah.
So let's circle back around to TRP with the with the different conditions, like something that's like back east where you're going to have a little bit more rain and mud versus out here in California where it's typically really dry. Is there something that like people should consider when they're looking at brakes as far as that goes?
Not too much. Brakes are pretty made to work in all conditions. The main thing you'd want to look at is your brake pads there. And there's, you know, 3 main types of brake pads. You have organic, which is made out of what we'll call it organic materials. So essentially there's no metal in it. And then you have a semi-metallic, which is half, you know, maybe not half and half, but it's a mix of organic and metallic. And then you have a full metallic pad, which is made out of mostly metal shavings. And the main differences are traditionally metallic pads have had a little more noise, but longer pad life, more power, more bite, and better with heat.
Do they call organic also resin?
Yeah, so organic can be called resin. Semi is kind of always semi, it's in the middle. And then metallic, full metallic, or sintered pads are kind of all the same.
So metallic and sintered's the same, organic and resin's the same, and then in between, the semi. Is there so I know I have a preference, and for me, I think it's I like the organics just because they're a little quieter, and but you definitely do burn through those pads a lot faster, especially being a big dude.
Yeah, if you tried to ride organics in the mud, you're going to be changing your pads probably every 2 weeks. You burn through them pretty quick. I mean, obviously it depends how much you ride and what you ride and those sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
But organics traditionally are quieter. With our metallic pads, we've gotten a lot of comments from customers saying your metallic pads aren't noisy. So I'm going to take the longer pad life and the more power.
Mm-hmm.
And I think even Shimano and SRAM have gotten pretty good with their metallic pads being quieter now.
Yeah.
And a lot of the noise comes down to pad maintenance, rotor maintenance, those sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
If your brake is, your rotors are perfectly clean, your pads aren't glazed, and nothing's contaminated, your full metallic setup shouldn't really make any more noise than they're organic.
Can you talk about pad and rotor maintenance? What you mean by that?
Yeah, so I mean, that would have to be a whole nother 3-hour special to really get into it. But the main thing is the biggest thing I see people do is they grab the rotor touch it with their finger, or they grab the pads and rub their thumb over the surface of the pad. And basically you just don't want any type of oil or grease getting on your rotor or pad, because both of those contact and transfer. Your hand has oil on it. Anytime you're using like a spray lube, if you spray that on the cassette, that's going to go onto the rotor. And those are all things that can contaminate it. You could be driving down the road and there's a puddle of oil and gets splashed up on your bike from the bike rack. And so if that gets onto your rotor, you go ride, you grab the brakes, it's going to get on your pads. And the pads, I mean, they're not a sponge, but they kind of act like a sponge, where if you get oil or grease on it and there's enough, it will actually soak through the whole pad. So at that point, you have to go buy new pads.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're riding a contaminated pad, it will sometimes make that kind of, not the turkey gobble, but more of the howl.
Right.
Almost sounding like a wet rag on a window.
Right.
And you'll be able to, grab your brake and still move the wheel.
Right.
And that typically signifies a contaminated pad. And the main thing there is just take your pads out, throw them away, take your rotor off, clean it with isopropyl rubbing alcohol or a brake cleaner, and then don't touch the rotor with your fingers. Don't touch the braking surface, because your fingers naturally have oil on it. If you probably lube your chain and there's some grease on your fingers too. So you want to be super careful not to touch that braking surface. And then you want to get some new pads and install those also without touching the braking surface.
Right.
And then the next thing where people mess up is they don't bed in their pads properly. So a lot of people like to take a brand new pad in and say, okay, I'm going to go ride the steepest trail I know, and that's going to bed them in. And that's probably the worst thing you can do. With a brand new pad, it's not mated to the rotor, so all the microscopic imperfections have not been worn down so that the pad's making full contact with every little micro contour. And so if you don't get it bedded in, you have less friction, right? Because you're not contacting everywhere perfectly. Mm-hmm. And less friction means you're going to grab the brake more. So if you go ride a steep trail, you're going to be dragging your brake more than you should, whereas normally you brake and then let go and brake and let go. When you drag your brake, you heat it up, and when you heat up a brake pad to a certain point, it glazes over. The material gets so hot that it's smooth like glass, and then you have even less friction than a brand new pad. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times that's when your brake will start making that turkey noise and the gobbling.
Right.
And then once you have a glazed pad, luckily you don't have to throw them away. You just have to take them off and use some either sandpaper or like drywall sandpaper where the material can fall through, and essentially rough up the surface and then go bed your pads in properly. And without getting into too much detail, a proper bed-in procedure, you go in like a flat parking lot or somewhere where your brakes don't have to work great, and you kind of pedal up to 15 miles an hour and then grab the brake super hard until you slow down to about 5. You don't want to stop or hold the pad to the rotor for too long, because then you're holding a hot pad to a hot rotor and you run the risk of glazing it. Basically, you'll pedal, brake super hard, let go before you stop, and then pedal up to speed, and you repeat that process maybe 15 to 20 times, depending on the pad, the rotor type. And that just lets the pad slowly mate with that rotor instead of just trial by fire, essentially. It warms it up to it. And then once it's meshed, you should have good friction and you shouldn't be dragging the brakes and you won't have issues with glazing.
Definitely, all good stuff. You're preaching to the choir as far as I'm concerned, but I definitely think that you're helping other people know those things. Whenever I see people like grabbing the rotors or whatever, I always am like, "Why are you doing that, dude?" Like,
yeah,
it doesn't even make any sense to me.
It's one of my biggest pet peeves. I mean, I get the idea you want to touch and feel everything, but there are certain things that you just shouldn't.
Or like even installing them, they'll be like putting on a brand new rotor and they're just like, holding it like a I don't even know how to say it, like a piece of pizza or something, It's like, you're like, dude, like just grab them, like, stick your fingers through the holes and then put them on there. Like, why are you doing this? And then you're 2 days later or a day later, whenever we're riding, bitching about something not being right. And you're like, yeah, it is what it is. I think that the bed-in thing too is people sometimes they'll be somewhere and they just throw some new pads in the night before and don't realize that you could actually just do that in the parking lot before you start your ride and kind of set yourself up a little better.
Yeah, that's one of those things where if you take it to a bike shop, the mechanic probably did it for you and didn't tell you he did it.
Right.
And when you go to put them in yourself, you don't think you need to do it, and you just let's go ride.
Yeah. Is that, and then normally whenever I'm using the sandpaper to kind of rough them up again, if I did glaze them or something like that, kind of do like a figure 8 routine with a little bit of the alcohol as well. And I don't know why I'm using alcohol. I think just because it kind of makes the sandpaper like a little gritty, and then that seems to help kind of rough them back up again.
Yeah.
And then moving on from that, I am freaking completely losing my train of thought right now. So whenever people are actually, I'm struggling right there. I don't know what the fuck I'm saying.
Well, in the meantime, I definitely got to give a shout out to my buddy Steve. Steve Watkins, he's just texted me to say, "Hey, I'm watching you on the podcast right now."
Oh, that's awesome.
And
man.
I didn't even tell him I was going to be on it. So.
Oh, that's cool. So he's a subscriber as well, then.
Yeah, I guess so.
How you know?
He's one of the local guys I go ride with pretty frequently out in Pisgah and stuff. I was actually out riding with him this Saturday.
Right on.
So yeah, we did a big not actually, it wasn't that big, but it was the leaves are changing out here right now, so it's just orange and red and yellow everywhere, and we were skidding around in the leaves because you can't touch the dirt right now.
Yeah, you guys are riding in a lot of leaves over there, and that's one thing that we don't have a lot out here. And whenever I get into a trail that is like covered with leaves, I have a big respect for you guys, because it's like the like predictability of the traction in leaves is like next to none.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's like riding in snow. It's fun once or twice, and then you're like, all right, I'm ready for dirt again.
I mean, do they go through, like, I guess like there's some of the trail maintenance in Pisgah is like people just walking around with a freaking leaf blower blowing that shit off, or is it getting like blown off the trail just from people riding it?
Yeah, it's a mix of both. Our trails don't see enough traffic that they won't get ridden off. We have to go out. Someone goes out and leaf blows them.
Oh wow.
I don't own a leaf blower, so I actually just can't do it.
Yeah.
I do my best to ride as fast as I can.
Yeah, you're just a shredder. You're like, I'll do it. No, I'm fucking cooking, dude. I just blow that shit all over the place.
Yeah, or we'll get a big rainstorm, and then the water flowing will actually wash them off too. Because we get that out here in North Carolina.
Yeah.
Water falling from the sky.
Lots of that. Yeah, we don't see much of that out here in California.
Yeah.
So where do you have any trips in mind next year? Any riding trips?
I'll have a lot. So a big part of my job is taking our new brakes or our prototypes out to customers, which my customers are all the bike brands in North America. So your Specialized, Cannondale, Fuji, Norco, all those guys. And I'll take the brakes out there, take my bike, or steal one of their demo bikes. And when I'm shopping around for a new bike, I get the unique opportunity to go to every company and test ride one of their demos.
Right.
But so I'll go and ride with a lot of those guys. So I'll spend some time in the Pacific Northwest because you got Kona, Rocky Mountain, Norco, Raleigh, Diamondback. So I'll go ride with a lot of those guys, which is always a treat. That's probably one of my favorite places to ride outside of California. And then obviously you got Specialized, Santa Cruz, and Marin all up in your area, which Santa Cruz is one of my favorite places to ride. And I've been shown some of the cool, less than, we'll say, legal stuff in the Marin, Novato, Petaluma area. And that stuff was super cool too.
Yeah. There's a lot of that in the Bay Area, a lot of that less than legal stuff, which is funny because like that's where mountain biking essentially started. And it's like one of the like least legal places to ride today.
Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous, but I guess that's what happens when mountain bikers are not the richest people around.
Right.
we don't get the most say.
Yeah. One of these days we'll get rid of those pesky equestrians.
Yeah.
So then you're getting down south too. Are you doing because down in like the SoCal area, you got what, Giant down there and some other companies as well?
I don't work with Giant because I think they're technically a Taiwanese or Chinese company.
Oh, I see.
So we have some guys in Taiwan who probably work with them.
Oh, okay.
That may be part of the plan in the future is to work with the U.S. branch, and our Taiwan guys can work with the Taiwan branch, and we're all better off. But I'll go see Haro and Felt, probably Intense at some point in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of growing into this job where it started with me meeting with our existing customers, and now we're looking to branch out,
like pre-marketing with other customers and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, mostly just to meet with every brand that's out there.
Right.
So not necessarily that we're expecting to sell with everyone, but just everyone knows what we have and what's available. And if it's right for them, they'll choose to buy it. If not, they'll buy whatever.
How do you like TRP as a company, like being an employee?
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's a smaller crew, so we get the unique opportunity to do a bunch of things.
Mm-hmm.
So as I'll do a lot of our social media, some of our athlete sponsorship stuff. I'll do things like this. I'll go do OEM sales. I'll be on the show floor at Interbike. So it's pretty cool to get to do a bunch of those things. At the same time, that can be stressful and draining to be trying to be the master of 6 different tasks. And it's a lot of travel thing. It's pros and cons, but fun to be kind of the underdogs in a sense. Whereas, obviously if you're at SRAM and Shimano, that those brands carry a certain weight that, they've been around for so long, and when they walk into the room, people listen.
Right.
For us, we kind of have to work a little harder, but it's a fun challenge to say, okay, if you don't want to listen to me, we're gonna make a product that you have to listen to. Like you won't be able to ignore this.
I think that there's something good about the smaller company as well, just because I feel like customer service wise, like you really still give a shit about your customers. And I'm not saying that the bigger companies don't, but I mean, just to pick on some companies while we're having this conversation, and not for any reason other than pulling a name out of a hat. Like I walk into your area and you guys are chatting it up with me like I'm just a regular dude, and I walk into like SRAM's like special little section area of Interbike, and they're talking to some other dude that's going to buy like 5 million sets of something from them, and they don't really give a fuck about the regular guy, And at the end of the day, like, that event is not made for the regular guy, so I can't really knock on them too much for it. But on the other hand, it still carries some weight in your personality, when you walk out of the room. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I mean, I don't want to pick on any companies because I have good friends at SRAM and Shimano, and
and I'm just using them because that's a name that everybody knows. I mean, that may not even been the experience that I had. It's just you know what I'm saying.
Not that you were talking trash, but it's more of what I was getting at was I know guys there who are super cool, and I've met guys at those companies who are the opposite, right? They're the biggest douchebags you ever met.
Right.
And I think the smaller company, when there's 6 or 8 of us, it's pretty easy for, the boss to be super hands-on and call
Right.
people out if they're not, being the way he wants them to be.
Right.
Whereas, somewhere like Shimano or SRAM, you got, a few thousand employees, probably 50 to 60 guys just in the marketing department. So they may not see that someone else's behavior, or see the way they kind of ignored you at Interbike. And it comes more onto the employees' personal values and the way they see things. And then sometimes it's the company culture. Shimano has, I think, a lot of rules about dress code, and they always have to wear the blue polos, whereas Tran, they get a little more freestyle, like they kind of can wear a button up, or they can wear a t-shirt. We kind of have a SRAM on it. yeah, exactly. And that's where companies get the chance to differentiate themselves.
I think the smaller companies, though, too, they'll still be like super hungry. Like I can equate it to like football, like the college football players, like those guys are running the freaking like the 90-yard kickoff return touchdowns, and they're like going for 4th and goal all the time, or where it's like pro, it's like, well, we'll just kick it and we'll see what happens. And, it's like, we're going to play the strategy game, and instead of like let's see how big my balls are game. And I think, with that perspective, like wrapping it back into the bike companies, like those smaller companies, they have that hunger, where they're just trying, maybe they'll take some chances on some things, or, try to push the envelope a little bit more, because their opportunity for failure isn't as much, like, let's just say you guys make a brake design that maybe once it comes out of production, it isn't like up to snuff for you guys. Like how many you've rolled off the production line at that point compared to maybe another company that's a huge company, like they have a lot bigger, loss that they've taken for that risk.
Yeah, and our ability to pivot is probably our biggest strength at the moment. Whereas e-bikes are the new sector. Boom, let's pivot all of our engineering and focus into that and make a break right away. Whereas some of the larger companies, it's a 3-year track just to turn that ship in the other direction.
And that's definitely very strong point in a smaller company is that ability. What you're saying there.
Yeah, I mean, and there's pros and cons to both. Obviously, they have resources and support crew that would be awesome if we had it, but we don't. And we can pivot and do things quicker, and they wish they could, but they can't.
Yeah.
So it's all pros and cons, and it's definitely been a fun experience being on the smaller side and learning a lot. And if I ever am on the larger side, I think it'll be a super valuable skill set to know how each part of a company functions. Whereas if you're at a larger company, you're just one piece in the marketing department.
Yeah.
Whereas here, I've jumped between marketing and engineering. Obviously, I'm not doing engineering, but working with the engineers on a new project and getting feedback from customers and athletes, and kind of being involved in all those sides, it gives you that big picture without being the CEO.
Has to give you a bunch of self-worth as well in your job, what you're doing, like feeling like you're really being able to make an impact on things. Do you go to a bunch of the different like kind of events, like Sedona kind of things and stuff like that, or?
Not at the moment. I do a lot of travel, visiting the customers, and then going to the big trade shows like your Sea Otter and Interbike, Eurobike. I'll be at Taichung probably in the spring. I think
What's that?
That's kind of like a Interbike or Sea Otter over in Taiwan.
Oh wow, okay.
And that's where a lot of the new products will get displayed, because they'll just carry the prototype over from the factory, in the taxi or whatever.
So out of those big events, so basically you got Sea Otter here in the U.S., Eurobike and then the Wang Chung that you were just talking about a second ago. Which one of those events to you is the most fun?
I mean, for me, Sea Otter is the most fun because it's kind of like going home for me.
Right.
Obviously not SoCal, but I got a lot of friends who are up there racing. But my favorite thing is I stand on my feet all day and answer questions about brakes, and then I get to go hang out at the beach after. Right. And I had no offense to Reno, but I prefer Monterey to Reno.
Yeah.
Pretty much any day.
No, I hear you there. That's definitely easy to make that decision.
Yeah, and I like the vibe of Sea Otter. It's big, it's outdoors. You're out in the sun, breathing in fresh air, and you've got racing going on. You've got demos, you've got grand fondos, and it's really anyone who's into bikes can go there and find something. And I think that's pretty cool. And to me, that's the most valuable event because you can go to a Sedona and you're going to get a lot of non-racers and people who ride their bikes for fun. And then you can go to, World Champs or something, and you're only going to get racers and fans. Or you go to an outer bike in Moab, and you're only getting guys who are trying to pick out their next bike.
Right.
And Sea Otter, you kind of get a little of everything, which is, at the end of the day, if they're riding a bike, they're spending money on it. So you don't want to isolate. You don't want to isolate the racers or isolate the non-racers.
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't get to go last year. That would have been my I've never actually been to Sea Otter. So last year I was planning on going, but one of my buddies got married. I was the best man in his wedding, so I couldn't dip out on that one. And
that's fair enough.
Unfortunately, he decided to go get married in Hawaii too, because I was like, why couldn't you just do it at home, dude? I could have went to Sea Otter the next day, So like here I am bitching about going to Hawaii, right? And but I'm really looking forward to going next year. Do you guys typically do like any kind of like releases whenever you go to Sea Otter, or is that kind of like
the releases? We're trying to start releasing things just when they're ready and not force it ahead for Sea Otter or sit on it until Sea Otter kind of thing. And I think part of that's just with the internet. It's so big that everyone will do a release of Sea Otter. So why not do it 2 weeks before or 2 weeks after when the magazines aren't trying to pick the 50 coolest things from Sea Otter. They're picking the coolest thing on May 14th.
Right. So you definitely have more of a chance to get to get noticed at that point than you do if you're in the mix of everybody else.
Yeah, and I think it's not even a chance to get noticed. It's even a Specialized or whoever the biggest company is. They could release something at Sea Otter and they're going to get, a good mention, but it's still a good mention in a sheet of everyone else's stuff. Right.
That's how it makes sense.
So rather than fighting to get on the list of 50, just pick a day when you're the only one.
Right.
Or maybe it's you against someone else rather than you against the entire industry.
Right. Like maybe one of your competitors is launching something, you want to get in front of that or something like.
Yeah,
I get it. Yeah.
On the other hand, if the dates line up, what a better stage than Sea Otter, right? Everyone's there, everyone's seen it. The media is looking for everything, so I don't think there's a downside to either. But yeah, I think with the internet, there's less of a focus of hitting those deadlines, and I think that's why you'll see like the indoor bike has kind of been shrinking over the years because there's no reason to go display stuff anymore. It's we want to ride it, we want to feel it, see how it works, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think that the other thing too is like, this is what was explained to me by somebody at the Outer Bike, and I don't know how true it is, but they were like, if you were a company like a Santa Cruz or a Specialized or whoever, like those companies that you didn't see there, the big mountain brands, they told me that they're doing a lot of their own events now. Because then you can get people there and they can drink the Santa Cruz Kool-Aid or the Specialized Kool-Aid for the whole event. Or they could go to Interbike and they could talk to you for an hour.
The main component is those guys have their dealers. And so a Specialized dealer will sell only Specialized bikes. And so what reason does he have to fly to Reno to go look at the new Specialized bikes? And he could look at the Treks, but he's not going to sell them. He can look at the Mongoose or whatever. So why not buy a flight to Morgan Hill and go visit Specialized, and you can ask about pricing, and they can hand you free T-shirt and water bottles and give you a tour of the factory, and then show you all the new stuff. And you spend more time focusing on the stuff you actually sell versus looking around at what's new and spending a bunch of money staying in a hotel in Reno. Right.
I keep forgetting that they're down there. I need to like work my magic to try to get in the doors there and talk to somebody. I know that they're still probably Specialized is the biggest bike seller out there, aren't they?
Yeah.
I think they're still number one.
I think Shimano is the largest company in the cycling industry, maybe Giant. Those two, and then Specialized is either number 2 or 3 as far as, you know, gross income, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Specialized
I think as
definitely
far as
the largest
bike sales.
Sales.
Yeah. There's one thing about, you know, being the biggest company like that. I'm sure you get a lot of flack because you're the elephant in the room. But on the other hand, like what I always tell people whenever they're like kind of thinking about those bikes and somewhere they've gotten that opinion from somebody else, like, oh, I don't want Specialized, they're the biggest. And it's like, look, dude, you also don't get to be the biggest company if you don't sell good shit. You know?
Yeah.
Like, so like, just don't go crap on them just because they're the biggest. Like there's obviously something behind that, you know?
Yeah. I mean, and I own a Specialized, my cyclocross bike is a Specialized. And, you know, at the end of the day, they make some of the best bikes out there. Some bikes, in my opinion, other people do better. But at the end of the day, if Specialized sells more bikes, more people want Specialized than other bikes. And therefore, they're the biggest company. It's not, you know, they didn't sell their soul to someone to make sure that Specialized gets bought. And, you know, it's similar to with politics. If someone gets more votes, you may not like them or agree or think they're dumb, but more people wanted them than the other guy.
Right.
So therefore, they are the choice.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Or at least more people showed up, right?
Yeah.
So you mentioned cyclocross a second ago. Do you guys have a line of brakes for them as well?
Yeah, so we actually, when cyclocross bikes were all cantilever brakes, we made probably the best cantilever brake on the market, which was the Revox, and it's since been, I believe it's discontinued now because cantilever brakes, nobody buys them anymore.
Right.
But we won, we were trying to count the other day, 12 or 15 world titles and several World Cup overalls, all on cantilever brakes. Since then, we have 2 products that are, you know, kind of cyclocross, but they're more geared towards the budget cyclocross or drop bar bike, and they're cable actuated brakes. So we have one that's a dual piston mechanical. So most mechanicals, one side's fixed and one side moves in. Right. And then it bends the rotor over into the other pad, and then it contacts both pads. So ours, both pads contact evenly, just like a hydraulic brake. So it gives you a little more power, more even clamping force, even pad wear, easier adjustability to center it so it's not rubbing. And then we actually have a hydraulic caliper that's actuated by a cable. So it takes basically the piston and the push rod that's in the lever and attaches it to the caliper and pulls it with a cable instead of you pulling it with your finger.
So what's the point in doing a hydraulic cable actuated brake? Like I don't understand why you would want to go through the extra engineering.
Yeah, the main reason is cost savings. And actually, initially when disc brakes came to drop bars, nobody had hydraulic brakes in the levers. So you had cable only, and then you could have mechanical or a hybrid.
Right.
And then as people have introduced hydraulic, it unfortunately costs more. So, you know, and I don't know the exact numbers for the customer, but you can pretty much go one level higher on your shifting and use cable actuated brakes than if you went full hydraulic. So in road bike terms, if you want to use Ultegra shifting, you can get that with a cable actuated brake for the same price as 105 shifting that's full hydraulic.
Right.
So that's the main thing. And if you're riding road bikes and even cyclocross, the hydraulic caliper will give you the same braking power, but you just have a little more friction with the cable. And so it doesn't feel as nice and smooth, but it serves the same purpose. I can lock up my wheels and I can stop you around the corner and whatever. So
is there a weight difference with the cable actuated over the hydraulic?
I think it's pretty even. Our hydraulic cable actuated is the same or heavier. But you know, one, you have a 3-ply hydraulic line with fluid inside, and one you have you know, a compressionless steel wound housing with a steel cable inside. So I don't remember which way the weight goes, and it may depend on your setup, but I don't think it mostly wasn't a weight thing. The main thing is hydraulics in the mud and the dirt will be consistently smooth. Whereas cable, just like you're shifting cables, you'll have to change it as you ride, right? You'll ride for 3 months and it gets dirty and rusty, and then you got to change it or else it won't be smooth anymore.
Right. I hear you. That's interesting, man. It's definitely so many different aspects. And I think even as a mountain biker, like before, I think, you pretty much were always like a wide knobby tire, flat bar kind of guy. And now the mountain biking, like it is like kind of crossing over a little bit with those gravel bikes, those CX bikes as well, where you're starting to see, I mean, even me, like I bought mine because I didn't want to buy a road bike. Right. But I could buy a CX bike and put slicks on it and ride with my lady on her road bike whenever, she wanted to go on some big ride like that. But on the other hand, I could go somewhere that was kind of like tame to ride on my Bronson, and turn that into a pretty fun ride though, so it's definitely, and I don't feel like I'm like selling out to like the lycra gods, by getting a CX bike, right? So that's it's fun to see like the changes, and I'm really curious to see, at the end, like how the whole e-bike thing plays out. I have my opinions. I don't want to get too much into that at this point, but I think that it's a good time to be a bike rider, and it's a good time to have a good product out there,
Yeah. I think the whole industry is changing, and e-bikes bring an interesting dynamic. So it's cool. I have a good buddy from Southern California he's got to be 70, in his mid 70s now, and he's had 2 heart surgeries, and he's got a pacemaker, and he was in Vietnam and everything, and basically his doctor told him, you can't mountain bike anymore because if your heart rate gets too high, the pacemaker's not going to keep up.
Right.
And so he asked the doctor, okay, if I ride with this heart monitor that beeps when it gets too high, can I ride? The doctor said, sure. So he rides with that. He went and bought an e-bike.
Right.
And now he's sitting on my wheel, and I race and stuff. He's sitting on my wheel, making fun of me, telling me to go faster, which he's never been able to keep up with me before. Right. And he's sitting there, and then his heart thing goes off, so he slows down a little bit, but he can keep riding with all of us.
Yeah.
Even
awesome.
though he's having health concerns, and I think that aspect of it's really cool. And personally, I don't have one. I don't have the money to buy one.
Right.
I wouldn't mind one for a day when I'm super tired or hungover or something, and I just don't want to sweat it out.
Right.
But
story of my life.
For the most part, I enjoy the pain and the getting the fitness, so I don't mind. Like, sometimes I'll actually go park at the bottom and pedal up for the shuttle because I don't want to shuttle up.
I'd like to get one to just go do like some like 50-mile epic up in Tahoe that I wouldn't be able to pedal normally. What I mean?
Like, to me, the beauty of it's, at one point we added suspension and disc brakes to bikes, and the argument could be made then, well, now you can ride farther than you should, and you didn't earn your turns because now your bike is 20 pounds instead of 45.
Yeah.
And now you have a motor that helps you go a little further, but you still have to pedal yourself. And you still have to.
I just read an article like do you ever read Mountain Bike Action?
I do. I haven't read recent ones.
One of my favorite, and I have that subscription to the magazine. I'll be honest, I probably didn't read like the last 10 just because I've been busy as shit, right? But the other day I was cleaning up stuff, and the new one came in the mail, and I always like the little editorial that's at the beginning. It's kind of like, like a 1-page little thing. And the thing that the guy was talking about, and the one that I read just the other day, was he was saying it's funny how like people want to shit on e-bikes and they say, oh, you didn't earn it or whatever. But he was going out to Whistler for something, right? And there was some company that was contacting him about, hey, do you want to take this heli drop? And he's like, so all the same people that will talk to you all kinds of shit about how crappy it is to like not earn your turn on the e-bike are all the guys that are definitely putting their hands up to get on this fucking helicopter.
Yeah.
So
no, it's a huge double standard, and I don't think there are many people out there who can say, I've never taken a chairlift, I've never taken a shuttle,
right?
I've never gotten a flat tire or gotten someone's car to ride home.
Right.
And and that's all the e-bike is it's your spare tube, or it's your chairlift where there isn't a chairlift.
Yeah,
at the end of the day, it's not the e-bike's fault that people are going places they shouldn't be. That's rider responsibility. And if a zone is closed to bikes, you shouldn't ride it.
I think the other end of it too is like you almost said it verbatim, but just in different words. That like here is a guy that is cooking on his own power at you, and here is a guy that's on the e-bike is just being able to keep up with you. So what does that tell you? Like for the most part, most of the average quote unquote, you know, or whatever kind of guys, the speeds that they're going to do on the e-bike are not any better than what the shredders are doing. So it's, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not insecure about someone. You know, if someone passed me on an e-bike, hey, that's cool. They're going fast. Like I want to go fast too, and it's none of my business. And if you got a problem with someone passing you on an e-bike, you know, maybe you should get an e-bike then, or get a little faster. You know, go get a coach or something.
Right. I think you know it's similar to how I feel just about trail access and stuff like that. I'm like, why should we be like stopping anybody to go outside at this point? Like it, you know, there's not enough people going outside as it is. So to like start laying restrictions on like, you can't ride bike here, or you can't ride e-bike there, or, you know, it's like, you can't hike on this trail. It's like, dude, I don't really care, you know, like get outside and fucking have fun. Right.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Cody, I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down here. We're like rolling up on 2 hours. Is there anything you want to say about TRP in closing, or?
No, I think we covered a lot of it. Just you know, we're out here trying to make the best breaks we can for people, and hopefully improve their experience riding bikes. And
right on.
Thanks for having me. And it's the daylight savings is hitting me. It's about 9 o'clock on the East Coast, and we had a late one on one of the pub cycle bikes for friends going away party last night, and then we rode for like 3 hours today. So
ouch.
I'm about maxed out.
Yeah, I know. I feel you, dude. I'm over 40, so I have that excuse every weekend. So daylight savings time makes it worse. So I once again, dude, I really appreciate you being on here. It was really fun chatting with you about brakes and the industry, and I had a great time talking with you. I look forward to bumping into you again out here out in the mix again sometime in the near future. For all you guys listening, I'm just going to reiterate, this is also a podcast that you can check out on Apple and Google Play and SoundCloud. If you get a chance to swing by there and do a little write-up or give some stars or something like that, that would be awesome. Same thing with this video. Hit a thumbs up. If you want to see more of this content, hit the subscribe button. It's pretty simple. Like that number makes me feel good about myself. And other than that, it also makes the algorithm work. So if you're trolling this shit, hit the button. I appreciate everybody. I want you guys all to know it only takes a bike to be a biker. Get the fuck out and be one, bitches.